Hello and welcome to episode 0 of Nerds and Dragons. I'm your dungeon master, Darby Hallman, and we did it, you guys. We are finally officially starting our actual play Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and I am super excited. So I just want to let you know at the top what's going on with this episode 0. A few weeks ago, we recorded a pre-campaign session where we just fleshed out our characters and the backstories and a little bit about the world. And while that discussion was great, it was definitely a little loose, and we were kind of figuring things out as it went. So I'm going to actually come in here and kind of summarize most of what happened in that session. I will use some of the audio from that because some of it was, very straightforward. But then others, especially Alex and Jeff's backstory, I am going to be reciting to you here. So you're going to be kind of cutting back and forth between me here in the present and then the whole group of us in the past a little bit. It's a little weird, but I think you'll get the message. Other point of order, I am currently recording on our old microphone, so my voice isn't indicative of what the sound quality will be in the real podcast. So if you hate the sound of my voice right now, maybe give us a little more of a chance. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about what Nerds and Dragons actually is. So Nerds and Dragons is going to be an actual play D&D podcast with an original campaign written and DM'd by me. I'm also going to be writing most of the music that you hear in this campaign. I'm pretty new to writing fiction, being a DM, and making music, so lots of firsts here. I'm very nervous, but I'm also super excited. We've already recorded the whole first arc, and I am pretty happy with how it's turned out, and I really think it's going to start going some really cool places. For the first arc of the campaign, we actually are running a pre-written campaign called The Sunless Citadel. It's actually a pretty old D&D campaign that was reworked for 5th edition. I just started with this for the first arc just to kind of get used to being a DM and so that all of us can get used to playing because all of us have very little D&D experience. And I kind of changed the end of it so that it can transition right into the campaign I've written. So the first arc is not going to be our original stuff. It's going to have some original elements, but mostly it's going to be the Sunless Citadel campaign. But after that, completely original. It's all the things that I've written. And let me just tell you guys, it's kind of terrifying to write something alone by yourself, fiction-wise, and then present it to your friends and just hope to God that you wrote something interesting. It's pretty terrifying, but it's also a very rewarding and fun process so far. And man, I have quite a sizable OneNote document just filled with plot stuff, game stuff. I'm going all in on this. This is probably the most excited I've been for anything we've done here. The plan is to release episodes of the podcast every Friday. I think we'll be able to do every Friday for one entire arc. There might be a little bit of gap time in between arcs just because, meeting up to record this, it's kind of hard to coordinate all of our schedules. But we're going to try to be as on the ball as we can about this. Also, if this can help sell you on it, I am absolutely very, very inspired by the Adventure Zone when coming into this D&D campaign. So if you're not super familiar with D&D or, the heavy rules and dice rolls and everything kind of turn you off, I think we might be a podcast you actually enjoy because I'm taking a very rules light but story heavy approach to this entire campaign. I don't want to get really bogged down by the nitty-gritty rules, especially if the rules kind of take away from the narrative stakes. I'd much, much rather have a cohesive and cool narrative than, adhere to the strict Dungeons and Dragons rulebook. So, I think that if you're kind of more of a casual fan, and especially if you like the Adventure Zone, definitely think this is going to be something fun. Okay, well, I think I have talked enough right now. I'm pretty tired of talking into this microphone by myself. It's pretty awkward, to be honest. So I'm going to kick back to our old recording and let you meet our 3 other players. And Jacob's going to tell you about his awesome backstory for his character. It's pretty great. And then we'll cut back to present Darby to hear about the other stuff, and then we'll get out of here. So thanks, and let's go to the past.
Yes, hello, and welcome to episode 0 of Nerds and Dragons, the nerdiest thing we've ever done at Nerds at Large. I am Darby Hallman, and I'm going to be the dungeon master for this campaign. Let's go around to each of our players and maybe just say your name, then maybe say your character's name and just your like class and race and all of that, and then we can get started. So who would like to go first? Jacob is being pointed at. You can bring it over. Like, yeah, we're having to share mics. It's very janky here.
Yep. I'm Jacob, and my character name is Darvin. He is a wood elf and a bard.
I'm just going to say, like, you're going to say Darvin, and I'm going to think you're, like, talking to me so often.
I am Jeff. My character's name is Brutus Bonebreaker. I am a human fighter. Fighter 1, I'm sorry. According to my character sheet.
Fighter 1.
What it says. Oh, that's supposed to be a level, I guess.
Yes.
No. Yeah, that's definitely your level. I am Avarice Redhorn. My name is Alex. I should have said that first.
No, your name is Avarice Redhorn. Your character's name is Alex.
And I'll be playing Alex, the mechanical engineer. Avarice Redhorn is a tiefling warlock.
Just sounds cool. It just sounds cool. And yeah, so this episode is going to really just be us kind of talking about our characters, talking a little bit about the world, just kind of as a primer for an actual D&D campaign that we're going to do and record into mics. And who knows how it's going to go. I have written a whole, like, at least backbone of a campaign that these fine gentlemen are going to proceed to destroy.
That's the only reason I'm here. I'm here just to ruin Darby streams.
And that's where we're going with this. But I'm excited. I'm hoping to, like, if this goes well, to release this, and like there's going to be arcs. So I'm hoping to like do hour-long chunks and do like 1 week at a time per arc. In between arcs, I can't promise anything because we have real lives and we have, we can only meet so often. So we'll see how this goes. But let's first start off with just a little bit of the backstory between these characters, and let's start with Darvin because Jacob already has quite a lengthy thing going on here, and I am pretty excited about Darvin the Wood Elf. Or is it a Wood Elf? It is a Wood Elf, right? Yeah, it is a Wood Elf.
Yeah. Okay. So Darvin was born in a small Wood Elf village in the Farrand Empire. From a young age, all Wood Elves are, as children, they are assigned to a master to study based on their natural talents. For Darvin, that was obviously music. And he studied under his village's master of song for many years and was taught everything from simple musicianship to how to imbue his songs with magic. And even though Darvin had a lot of natural talent and that far outweighed that of his peers, he never took studying very seriously. And he was viewed as a slacker by his master. He hated the traditionalism of his village and education, and he preferred to create his own compositions, which were seen as blasphemous by his master. And later in life, Darvin turned to and developed a fondness for drink and mind-altering substances, which was reflected in his songwriting. Using magic, he altered the strings of his lute to produce timbres never before heard, and his music was heavy, dissonant, and meandering, with a quality that shook the listener to their bones. His village hated it, and his master refused to pass him for many years, even as his peers graduated, and so he remained in his apprenticeship for a long, long time. Exasperated, his master granted him permission to embark on what is called a year of roving, where wood elves go out into the world and they gather, knowledge and experience, and they come back to their village. But his master granted him this journey in hopes that he would never come back, and he didn't. He never came back. And so he traveled around the Farron Empire and the Salvat Alliance, And at some point he ended up in jail and he escaped. But what he was thrown in jail for and how he escaped always changes. He always changes up the story.
Yeah.
Currently, and he squats in barns and pickpockets people and tries to make some extra coin here and there by playing in taverns or busking on the side of the road. But more often than not, people hate his music and he's usually thrown out. Currently,
So good.
Yeah. Currently, he is living in the outlaw territory in the middle, that desert area called what's it called again?
The Dragon
The
Sands.
Dragon Sands. Where they're a little more tolerant of his music and they kind of keep him around. He kind of hangs around the mercenary camps. But really, the real reason why they just allow him to stay around is because he will sell his homebrew drugs for a small price. So that is my character. And his dream is to have the ultimate trip so he can create his masterpiece.
Like Alex,
That's Darwin the Wood Elf.
Alex, I loved your backstory. And it immediately got me excited for this campaign. I was like, oh, none of the rest of them are gonna like match this. Like, I think Darwin is pretty damn good.
Darwin's is amazing.
I forgot to mention that when he left his village, he dropped his last name because that indicated where he was from.
Yeah.
And so he just goes by Darwin.
So he's kind of like incognito bard.
Yeah, it doesn't
like,
matter.
And I kind of picture this as like he's been arrested, so like he is kind of wanted, but it's not like none of his crimes have been to the point where like if you see a random person in Empire, they're probably not going to recognize Darwin the Wood Elf. But like, there's always a chance. Like anytime you're around Imperials, it's like, is someone going to recognize me? Nope. Okay, they didn't. Like, are they going to recognize? Oh, nope, they didn't.
How old and what's the appearance of Darwin?
So he's about 6 feet tall. He's about 6 feet tall with shoulder-length, dark brown hair that is wavy and unkempt and matted because, he's homeless, for lack of better words. He sleeps in like a shabby tent. He has dark brown eyes. And his clothing is a little stylish, but it's also dirty and unkempt and, wrinkled and kind of patched up with rips and tears.
Okay.
And he's 130 years old because elves live for a long time.
Okay,
so he's an adult, but he's
around.
not like a really old elf.
Okay.
But a kid at heart.
Yes.
I love it so much. It's so damn
so
good.
good.
It's so damn good.
Whoa, and now we're back in the present. Time travel. There's going to be a big time travel element. Or maybe there's not. Or maybe there is. There's not. But maybe there is. You don't know. I honestly don't know if I would feel comfortable with myself to handle time travel. But maybe in the middle of this arc, I'm just going to be feeling confident and ballsy. And it's like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to freaking do it. Avarice is going to open up a time portal. You don't know what I'm going to do. You don't know what I'm capable of. You're not my real dad. All right, I'm going to get started explaining the other two characters' backstory. Let's start with Avarice Redhorn, which is Alex's character in the campaign. Avarice Redhorn is a tiefling warlock, and here is his backstory. Avarice Redhorn is a tiefling warlock about 5'5" with red skin and red horns. Avarice is from a powerful house in a distant continent that claims a great deal of land and rules over a large population that includes everything from strong houses to peasant farmers. However, there is a dark side to how this devil-marked family rose to power, and an even darker story for how they kept their power over the years. Many, many generations ago, when the family was still human, Avarice's ancestors lived as peasant farmers under the rule of a cruel king. The family struggled to stay fed, and they lived and died off of their harvest. One day, on the way back from the city, the patriarch of the family wrecked his carriage on the side of a road and tumbled into a deep cave. He came to and discovered that he had shattered his legs, leaving him unable to do anything more than an agonizing crawl. When it seemed all hope was lost, a voice from inside the cave beckoned him further in. He crawled his way through the cave and eventually met a demon with no physical form, trapped in a cave. The demon gave the man a proposition. The demon would be able to possess the man's body whenever he wanted, allowing him to be free in the world again. In return, the man's future children would receive magical abilities, and the man himself would receive the power of a god. Knowing the doom his injury spelt for his family, Avarice's ancestor took the deal. However, while this power started as a necessary evil to keep the family alive, he began to push the limits of his power further. Why should a god be forced to be a peasant farmer, or even a lord? What's stopping a god living amongst men from being anything short of a king? Over the course of generations, Avarice's family used their extraordinary power to rise and rise through the ranks of rule until their current station as the central power of the continent. The road to get there, however, was a brutal and bloody one for Avarice's family. Though the family possesses the power of an ancient god, they are still mortal. In order to keep the family in check, and to ensure he always had the best vessel to operate with, the demon established one more terrible rule, and one that has plagued the family for hundreds of years. Every time the demon's vessel dies, a magical mark appears on each of their children's body. The children must then kill one another until only one remains, and this last man or woman becomes the next vessel for the demon. They then go on to have children of their own, and the process begins anew. Many generations of Avarice's family have made attempts to end this horrible cycle, though none have been successful. Some have refused to murder, but as they did, the mark on their body burned worse and worse until they gave in or went mad. Some have tried cutting their hands off, but the mark just reappeared somewhere else. The precious few who continued to abstain even through the agonizing pain were slowly transformed into terrible, inhuman monsters whose sole purpose was to eliminate others with the mark. Finally, this brings us to present day. Avarice Redhorn is the youngest son of Revel Redhorn. Growing up, Avarice knew that at any moment his father could be used for the mysterious needs of an ancient demon, sometimes being gone for months at a time. Avarice also lived with constant tension between himself and his siblings. While he was close with some of them, his eldest brother and his younger sister chief among them, the siblings of the Redhorn family always had an uneasy relationship. They all knew that no matter how close they grew, one day their relationship will be forced to become bloody. Shortly before the start of our story, Revel Redhorn died suddenly and mysteriously. Revel's death sent the continent into a total war, with houses pledging their support for different siblings and preparing for battle. Avarice is the second youngest sibling, and as such had little in the way of support, and would have been swiftly cut down if he stuck around. So instead, Avarice got on a boat and made his way to the continent of this campaign to gather fighters to his cause. So far, his only gained ally is a large and gruff ex-pirate who goes by the name of Brutus Bonebreaker. What fate lies in store for Avarice Redhorn? Only time will tell. Okay, last but certainly not least, let's get to Brutus Bonebreaker, played by Jeff. Brutus is a human fighter, and here is his backstory. Brutus is a human fighter of great size and fighting capability. With a large beard and tree trunk arms, he is a man built for one thing: destruction. What Brutus was not built for, however, was farming. Brutus was born into a small farming family within the Farron Empire and spent the early years of his life working away in the fields. Brutus knew farming wasn't his calling, and he always dreamed of being a knight for a great lord, rather than a peasant holding a plow. One day, Brutus got his wish. Sort of. When he was a teenager, Brutus witnessed bandits raiding a carriage passing by his parents' land. Using his raw strength, Brutus fought the bandits off and saved the people within the carriage. The passerby turned out to be Arlo Highland, lord of a small house in the empire that was hoping to pass through unnoticed. To show his gratitude, the lord offered Brutus a position as a protector for his house and promised that he would grow Brutus into the knight he always wanted to be. Brutus graciously accepted, and he left the farm to live out his dream. While the reality of working for House Highland was somewhat lesser than Brutus had imagined, he still enjoyed his years working for Arlo. He got to know everyone who lived in the family's meager castle and the surrounding areas. He fought off the occasional bandit group, settled disputes, made arrests, and received knightly training from one of the household knights. Unfortunately, these good times couldn't last forever. Eventually, Arlo was embroiled in a conflict with another local house that ended with the complete destruction of House Highland. Arlo had no heir, and with his castle taken, his men captured or slain, and his wife murdered, he had no choice but to flee. Brutus helped Arlo escape the massacre, and the two of them caught a boat and set sail. Both men were aimless for a time, traveling from port to port, taking odd jobs just to get by. Eventually, Brutus was asked to join a pirate crew. Brutus had some reservations, but Arlo jumped on the opportunity. So, the two of them became plunderers of the sea, pulling off minor hauls from small villages and other pirate crews. The job was far less noble than his previous position, but it did keep Brutus fed and wealthy enough. As time went on, Arlo began to charm his way deeper and deeper into the pirate company. He used the strong and intimidating Brutus as a leverage for his power. Eventually, after a disastrous attack that left many members in an imperial jail, Arlo campaigned to be the new captain of the crew. The current captain and Arlo each picked champions, and the winner would be the new captain, and the loser would be killed. While the fight was bloody and brutal, Brutus emerged victorious, and Arlo Highland was named captain. Over the next few years, Arlo's crew grew large and infamous. Merchant ships feared them, other pirates envied them, and the imperial fleet tirelessly pursued them to no avail. The crew quickly became a terror of the seas, and Brutus simply played his part and went along with the crew. Arlo's undoing came when he caught wind of an ancient treasure locked away in a mysterious ocean cave. Legend said that the cave had been sealed by some unknown magic for hundreds and hundreds of years. Every fisherman, barkeep, or pirate will tell you a different story about what lies within. Some say it holds the key to immortality. Some say it holds a hero's sword. Some say it holds the most beautiful woman in the world, just waiting for a brave adventurer to free her from her magical prison. Nobody truly knows what secret lies within. And that is precisely what drove Arlo Highland into madness. Brutus's mentor became completely obsessed with making his way into the cave. He was convinced that cracking this mystery would be his ultimate legacy. He began to devote nearly all of the crew's resources into finding a way into the cave. He had crews search for ancient artifacts, hoping that one of them will be the key to breaking the seal. Nothing worked, but these failures only served to make Arlo's efforts more desperate. After many failed attempts, Arlo set his sights on Port Unity, the largest coastal city in the Empire, with plans to steal the ruling house's ancient family sword. It was a disastrous plan that was doomed from the start, but Arlo was past the point of thinking rationally. The raid was thwarted by Imperial forces who killed much of the crew and took others prisoner. Brutus was thrown into a prison at Port Unity, where he spent a decent amount of time wasting away in a cell. The next chapter of Brutus's life began shortly before the start of our campaign, when a tiefling warlock by the name of Avarice Redhorn bailed him out of prison and promised him money and land if he worked under him as a hired sword. The tiefling was very cagey about the specifics, and though Brutus had a bad feeling about the whole job, he didn't have many other options. And so, once again, Brutus finds himself working as hired muscle under a mysterious employer that he doesn't trust. What's next for this brutish ex-soldier and ex-pirate? Only time will tell. And that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 0 of Nerds and Dragons. I really hope that you guys enjoy what we're about to put out, and I hope you stick with us for a while. This is a project that I'm very, very passionate about. It's a great opportunity for me to flex my creative muscles in a way that I don't really get to do, on a gaming podcast. So I am really excited. There are obviously other details like the world and different factions, but I'm probably not going to go into those here because I want to let you get some of it through my storytelling, but hopefully this just serves as a cool primer for our characters and just the very start of this arc. Alright, well, with that behind us, you should be able to find episode 1, the first official episode of our campaign, in this podcast feed right now. And if you are into video games, I also suggest that you check out our Nerds at Large gaming podcast that posts every Monday on all the different podcast services and on YouTube at youtube.com/nerdsatlarge. We just cover video game news, video games that we've been playing that week, and do a bunch of shenanigans. It's a fun show that we've been doing for over 120 episodes now, so that podcast is pretty established at this point. It's pretty awesome. You can also check out our live streams of video games and other nonsense at twitch.tv/nerdsatlargegaming. That's a fun time. And then you can also check out our blog at WordPress. Wait, hold on. Let me go get that real quick. Hold on. That is nerdsatlarge.wordpress.com is our blog. That's where Jacob puts up a lot of articles and a lot of music reviews, video game reviews. I wish that I was putting up stuff there, but who has the time to write and read words? Words are for nerds. Am I right? Right. All right. Thank you guys so much. Peace.